This week, we are counting down the top episodes of 2019. Today's show is 5 Ways to Battle Burnout with Mandy Froehlich, and it is the number 4 episode of Season 5. Angela Watson's 40-Hour Workweek Club cohort enrollment closes on July 15th. I have used it to become more efficient at grading and teaching and lesson planning, and I highly recommend it. So go to coolcatteacher.com/save time to learn more about how you can be more efficient. And just a quick note, after we get through this week, we will take a short break until we kick it back up for back to school. We have over 525 episodes now of the 10-Minute Teacher, and you can listen everywhere podcasts are available, including Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, radio.com, and more.
The 10-Minute Teacher Podcast with Vicki Davis. Every weekday, you'll learn powerful, practical ways to be a more remarkable teacher today.
So today we're talking with Mandy Fralick from Wisconsin. Now, Mandy, you have had some interesting conversations going on your blog about burnout and also balance. So we thought that we would start off with 5 ways to battle burnout. Do you have a problem with burnout?
Thank you so much for having me on, Vicki. I speak about burnout and balance mostly because they are things that I struggle with. So I have burnt out. I've actually thought about leaving the education profession entirely once upon a time, and it was because of burnout and just disengaging completely. And my goal is really to make sure that people are aware of it so that they can do something about it, because I really, really want educators to be happy in their job. I think that engagement in their profession is one of the things that most affects student learning. And so although we're talking about educators, it absolutely affects. And many times I find that people think that burnout
hold on
is,
a second. Hold on one second. So you did cut out on me that time. So back up to where you said, and sometimes people think just because we're educators, and then I lost you. So back up to the beginning of that sentence and then go. Okay.
I think that sometimes people think that, we're focusing on just educators, but it actually is affecting student learning as well. And so, burnout is more than just being tired after a long meeting. And that's kind of what I thought that it was at first, actually, when I started in teaching. And, we have this huge percentage of teachers who are leaving in the first 5 years. I think the current statistics said it was 31%. But it really doesn't count all the teachers who are burnt out and still in the classroom because they couldn't leave for whatever reason. When I was teaching and I was burnt out, I had 4 kids at home. I had a family to support. I couldn't leave the profession. And so, there are just some different symptoms actually for burnout. It's emotional and physical exhaustion, impaired concentration. It can be a weakened immune system where you're getting sick over and over again, easier than normal. It can lead to mental health issues like depression and anxiety, and then also constant irritability. And the longer that it goes on, it can even lead to angry outbursts and things like that. So there are some definite symptoms from burnout to look for.
Well, and I've been teaching now for 17 years, and, there have been several times where I've struggled with it. I think that most teachers I know have had their own battle with burnout at some point. So how do we battle burnout? What's our first recommendation you have?
Well, one of the things, and it probably seems a little obvious, but is to take a break. And, taking this time to recharge over, holiday breaks or, if you have your summer breaks or whatever it is, but disconnecting a little bit. And if you're very engaged in your PLN and in social media, that can even be a challenge that you need to be very cognizant about. And so taking a break, doing something that just allows you to unwind and decompress. And it might be that you have to take several days in a row, and it also might be that you just have to convince yourself that you're okay with that, because you need to do it in order to make yourself better.
I know every Sunday I try to take a digital Sabbath, and there are times when my husband and I agree that he will take my phone so that I can have a break and be offline. I can't stress how important this is.
Right. And it's, like I said, it seems so simple, but if you're a workaholic, like many of us are, taking a break is very uncomfortable. It's actually uncomfortable for me to not work, because I'm still working on how to handle all of the things that I have to do, just like everybody. And so it's really something that you need to be cognizant about and purposeful with.
Yeah. And, social media is designed to be addictive, and we have to be the ones to stand up and say, okay, this is not going to be my life. I'm going to focus on the people in my face-to-face world as well as myself. Okay. So what's your second recommendation?
So my second recommendation has a little bit to do with mindset, and it came from a Mayo Clinic article I was reading on burnout, and it actually said adjust your attitude. Being purposeful and rediscovering aspects of your job, making sure that you're complimenting the people around you. Kind of the idea that positivity spreads positivity. And just evaluating how you are, what lens you are looking through at your job. And is it something within you that you can adjust to be a little happier?
Yeah. When you look for the color red, you find it. When you look for the color blue, you find it, So
Yep.
You tend to get what you look for. So how do you look at the world? I think this is just such an important thing, because so often, there's this old story of a man who walked up to an old man in the town square and said, is this place full of good, kind, and gentle people? And the man said, well, what were the people like where you came from? And he said, well, they were terrible and awful and mean. And he says, go your way. The people here are just like that. And then another man came up and said, I'm wondering if there are good, kind, and gentle people here. And he said, well, what were the people like where you came from? And he said, they were good, kind, and gentle. And he says, well, you'll find them here too.
Yeah, that's true. And what you search out, you are definitely going to find. So if you are searching out the positive people and surrounding yourself with that type of thing, and also giving it back, that's one way to fight the burnout as well.
Okay, so what's our third?
Okay, so third is, and I recently wrote a blog post about this as well, is to find the thing that really feeds your soul. And that can be dependent upon what you're doing, or anything from the stage of life you're in to, what you're teaching or what your job is. So I think that being very intentional about doing the things that keep you going, that keep you engaged in your life, that make you happy, that those are the things that you need to look for. But also the serendipitous things that happen, that, where the world works in mysterious ways, being aware and watching for those things as well. And the example that I gave is that I had a really rough, busy month in December, and I was exhausted by the time that Christmas was coming around, and just trying to get through the week, and I had a countdown in my head, which I always say to people, don't count down, because kids need to know that it's fun in school as well as outside of school, and we shouldn't be counting down. I always say these things, and I was counting down in my head. And during that time, I had a student totally out of the blue. I taught her, I think 9 years ago, shoot me an email, and she said, Mrs. Fralick, I came across your website and I was looking at all the amazing things you were doing, and all these memories from fourth grade just came flooding back to me. And she said, and I really just wanted to reach out and ask you how you're doing. And I read her email in a meeting, and I just started crying because it was exactly what I needed right at that time to remind me, why I was doing exactly what it is that I do. And so really paying attention to those little things and watching for them is important as well.
Yeah, such a great reminder. Okay, what's our next one?
Okay, so the next thing is to work on balance, which is something we're going to talk more about, and just keeping in mind that balance is more than time, and that you need to make sure that you're balancing emotionally, physically, and spiritually. Number 5 is to seek support from your PLN. And I've worked hard to build my PLN. And one of the things that I think that people miss about having a professional learning network or a professional learning family is that it really needs to be built before you need it. I think sometimes people, follow a lot of people, but they don't really establish relationships with them. And then when they need somebody, they're not around and they don't understand why. And then they're like, oh, this PLN thing doesn't work. But it's actually something that you need to build and you need to maintain and cultivate. And, my PLN, is one of the most important ways that I stay engaged in the teaching profession, because there's nobody who understands me like those people do. And, so making sure that you just seek support from those people, that you work on those relationships and cultivate those, and allow them to help you through times of burnout.
Excellent. So we are in another upcoming episode. We'll be talking to Mandy about 5 ways to achieve balance, because yes, we want to avoid burnout, but we also want to have balance and live an amazing life. Thank you, Mandy.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the 10-Minute Teacher Podcast. You can download the show notes and see the archive at coolcatteacher.com/podcast. Never stop learning.